Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. So in this video, I am going to give you my personal ranking of the Alien movies. I'm doing this off the back of the recent release of Alien Romulus. And what I'm going to do is, instead of just doing like a standard ranking of the movies, I'm going to use something called a tier list. This is something you might have seen other YouTubers doing, but it's basically ranking the films and putting them into a tier. So you'll see what I mean shortly because I'll be sharing my screen with you, but I'll basically be putting each movies in a tier. So the high tiers all the way down to the lower tiers. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Right then guys, so we have here my tier list. So as you can see at the bottom, we have all of the Alien movies. So there are 9 movies there. And here we have my tier list. So there are 5 tiers. We have S, A, B, C, and D. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially rank the movies, but I'm going to put them all in a tier. So as you can imagine, the movies that I rate the highest will be in the highest tier. The movies I rate the lowest will be in the lower tiers. And just to make it a bit more interesting, I'm only going to allow, because we have 9 movies here and 5 tiers, I'm only going to allow 2 movies per tier, just to kind of make it interesting and, just to kind of spread them out over all 5 of the tiers. Just think it would be a bit more interesting than having, say, all of the movies in just a couple of tiers. So, yeah, with that being said, going to go straight into the first movie, which is, of course, the original Alien from 1979. Yeah, one of Ridley Scott's first movies, and yeah, for me, it's probably one of those films that I don't think he's ever really bettered in his career. I think the only movie that comes close to bettering this one is Blade Runner. But yeah, what can I say about this movie? It is a fantastic film. It's got a great cast, great sets, has a great atmosphere, the music. It's just a fantastic horror film, and it's one of those films that just gets better every time I watch it. And what I love best about this film is, even though we know what the aliens look like in the later movies, this film, I just love how you don't really see the alien properly in this film. It's always shot at strange angles. You don't really see it in like a full frame, and it's just so masterfully directed. And yeah, I just love that particular aspect about it. It's a fantastic movie, and yeah, it's very easily in the S tier for me. Yeah, it's definitely one of the best ones out of all of these. So yeah, easily an S tier. So now we move on to Aliens. So yeah, the sequel to Alien, this one directed by James Cameron. And yeah, again, I don't need to say too much about this one. This is my favorite Alien movie. I remember seeing this one when I was about 11 years old, and it just completely floored me. I just could not believe how good this film was. And, whenever I rewatch this movie, I love it. It takes everything that was great about the first Alien and just tops it and, makes it bigger and better, as sequels should. And again, we've got a great cast, great sets, great practical effects. The music by James Horner is a standout. And it's just a great story, and, tons of great action sequences. And, the last 30 minutes of this movie is just relentless. And yeah, I just love it. So again, this is going to be a very easy S tier for me. And I don't think many people are going to argue with those 2 movies in the S tier. Right, so we move on to Alien 3 now. So yeah, this is probably the most sort of unique and probably divisive film in the entire franchise. And I'll admit, the first time I saw this movie, which was pretty close to when I first saw Aliens, the first time I saw this movie, I hated it. I despised this film. And the main reason why is because what they did at the beginning of the movie, what they did to the surviving characters from Aliens, I did not like what they did with that, and it left like a poor taste in my mouth whilst I was watching the rest of the movie. But I have to admit, over the years, this film has kind of grown on me, and there's something about it that makes it stand out amongst the entire franchise. And like I said, it just offers something very unique and very different. And, you know, it's an interesting sort of take on like the Alien franchise, I suppose. It's definitely a flawed movie. It's not perfect. Some of the special effects don't really hold up. The story could have been better, but it just has some pretty good moments in it. I like the sort of the nihilistic tone. I like a lot of the kills in it. I think it has a pretty decent finale as well. And even though we did get a fourth movie with Alien Resurrection, I think if they'd have just stopped at Alien 3, I think it would have been a fairly decent conclusion to the trilogy. I mean, it's nowhere near Alien and Aliens for me, but it's one of those movies that has definitely grown a lot for me every time I watch it. And yeah, I would never have said this when I was a 11, 12-year-old kid, but it's probably still one of my favourites in the series, even though it's not as good as the first two. But with that being said, I'm probably going to throw this one into the B tier for now. That could potentially change. But with that being said, we'll move on to Alien Resurrection. So yeah, I think this is probably another divisive film in the entire series. I think people seem to be very much on the fence on whether they like Alien 3 better or they like Alien Resurrection better. For me, I definitely prefer Alien 3. This film, for me, just doesn't work, and I have never been a fan of it. I don't think the director that they got, I forget the guy's name, I know he's a French director who had directed Amélie and films like that. I felt he was a really poor choice to direct an Alien movie, and a strange choice, and I just don't like some of his choices that he made as a director. I don't like the look of this film. I think it's visually ugly. A lot of the special effects and the sets and all that kind of stuff just don't work for me, and it has that sort of cheesy late 90s CGI kind of feel to it that I really don't like. I don't really care for the story. I think the whole sort of gimmick of bringing Ripley back, but having her being sort of part Ripley and part alien, it just doesn't really work for me. And then we have the finale, which is a very divisive finale, and you know, it introduces the whole sort of, you know, alien human hybrid stuff. I just don't like it. I just don't like any of that. I hate how this movie ends. The only one bit I like from this film is the underwater sequence where they have to swim from one side of a room to another and they're being chased by the aliens. That's actually a pretty cool sequence. But other than that, I just don't really like this one. So for now, it's going to have to go into the D tier. Right, on to Alien versus Predator. Yeah, for me, this film is just okay. That's really all I can say about it. You know, I think the idea of doing Alien versus Predator sounds kind of cool, but I don't think it was really needed for a film. I think it probably just works better as a comic book, how it originally was. It's got some fun moments. It's got some good alien scenes. It's got some good Predator scenes, but the movie as a whole is just so forgettable. I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times, and I always struggle to remember what happens in this movie and how it ends. There's a few bits I can remember, but not much. But it does have some fun moments, I suppose, and I probably do prefer it over Alien Resurrection. So yeah, for now, I'm going to put this one in the C tier. It's not one of the best films in the series, but it's not one of the worst either. So yeah, we'll put it in the C tier for now. Which brings us on to Alien vs. Predator 2, or Alien vs. Predator Requiem, is it? Yeah, this one's straight into the D tier. I don't even need to justify that one. I remember seeing this one in the cinema. I just could not believe what I was seeing when I watched this film. It was just such a strange movie. You know, we all talk about, well, I know a lot of people talk about how dark this film is, and, you know, that definitely goes without saying. It is a dark movie and it's hard to tell what's going on. I just don't care for the story in this one. And I think, like the first Alien versus Predator, it's just very bland, very forgettable, and, you know, you just feel like you should be getting more out of a movie that pits the aliens against the predators. But yeah, just doesn't work, and it just has a very B movie kind of feel to it. You know, the cast is pretty forgettable. The locations are really boring. The action's boring. It's probably the worst film in the entire series, so it's easily a D for me, and it's probably not going to move from there. Right, so now we go on to Prometheus. So, chronologically, the first film in the franchise. Now, this is probably going to be the biggest sort of hot take, because I know a lot of people really like this film, but for me, I hate this movie. I have never liked it. I remember going to see it in the cinema, and I think I reluctantly went to go and see it in the cinema because for me, I was never big on the idea of doing a prequel to Alien. I just didn't think it was necessary. I think what makes the aliens scary is the mystery behind them, and I just don't think we needed to have their origins explained. So I was never really a big fan going into this movie anyway. But then when I finally saw the film, again, I just found it very forgettable and kind of boring. And, you know, I kind of struggle to remember what happens in the movie, but I just felt like the story never really progressed. And I know obviously they wanted to carry it on with a couple more films, but it just kind of feels like the story goes absolutely nowhere in Prometheus, and yeah, just was not a big fan of it. I will say the movie is visually one of the best looking in the entire series. Some of the shots in this, the cinematography, the special effects are fantastic, but in terms of the story and sort of, you know, providing that entertainment value, the movie does nothing for me. So it goes in the D tier for me, but that means I'm going to have to move one, but I'm definitely not moving Alien vs. Predator 2, so I'm going to have to move Alien Resurrection up to the C tier. Yeah, I would prefer watching that film over Prometheus, so yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that choice. So that brings us on to Alien Covenant. Okay, now this is an interesting one because, you know, I obviously don't like Prometheus, as you can see, with it being in the D tier, so you'd expect Covenant to be in a similar position. But I'm probably one of the few people that liked Covenant more than Prometheus. Again, you know, as a whole, I don't really care for the movie because, again, it's just an extension of Prometheus and it's an extension of that prequel story. And I don't care for the story of Prometheus and Covenant. I never felt it was needed. And again, I just don't think this film really progresses the story very much from Prometheus. And again, I can't really remember anything that happens in this movie bar the last 20 minutes. And I think the last 20 minutes is kind of what saves it for me and why I like it a bit more than Prometheus, because at least in this film, we do get some alien action. And I think that's probably what saves it for me. I don't think it's a great film. Like I said, I just don't care for the whole sort of prequel idea, but I do like it more than Prometheus. But now I'm struggling with where to put this one, because I don't think I like it more than Alien vs. Predator or Resurrection. I think I'm going to have to very, very reluctantly move Alien vs. Predator into the B tier and put Alien Covenant in the C tier. Yeah, I think I'm being very generous putting Alien vs. Predator there. But I think just, you know, for silly sort of action, that kind of stuff, I would rather watch Alien vs. Predator over Covenant. So Yes, I'm going to have to put that in the B tier and Covenant in C. So that brings us on to Alien Romulus, the latest film in the series. Yeah, I only just recently watched this at the cinema a few nights ago. Okay. I thought this film was good, but I don't think it was great. I was kind of worried about them doing this movie that took place between the first and the second film. I always worry when, franchises do that because, you worry about things being contradicted from the previous movies. But I do think on the whole, this film does respect the franchise. It looks great. The cinematography is fantastic. The sets, or the whole sort of overall design looks great, and it feels very much like a true sort of follow-up to the first Alien film. It's got some really thrilling sequences. I like a lot of the whole sort of practical effects. There's not that much CGI in it. I think the cast is decent. A little bit forgettable for me. A lot of the characters are, but they're okay. They're not bad. And yeah, it's just got some fun moments, although it does take quite a bit long to get going. But there's a couple of things that let this film down for me. The first one is the fan service. There's like throwbacks to famous lines from other movies. I just don't get why they do it. I'm not a fan of it. Not to go into like spoilers or anything, but there's just some famous lines that are used in this film, and it just kind of undermines, when they were originally used in the previous Alien movies. So I'm not really a fan of that aspect. But the biggest problem this movie has is the ending, the sort of the last act. And I know a lot of people have talked about the last act, and yeah, I myself wasn't a fan of it, and it really took me out of the film because whilst I was watching this film, it was going to get a pretty good score from me, but the last act was what really let it down. Yeah, and it just kind of ends, and there's no sort of resolution to this film, and, you wonder if they're going to do anything after. Who knows? They probably will, if it's a box office success. I'm sure it will be. But, yeah, I think the movie is pretty decent, but it has some problems. So where to place it on the list? Well, obviously the A tier is the only one available, but I don't think this movie is an A tier. I think it's going to have to go into the B tier. And I'm not moving Alien vs Predator up anymore, so I'm going to have to move Alien 3 up to the A tier. That might be slightly generous, but I think on the whole, I prefer Alien 3 over Alien Romulus. So, there we go. So we have Alien and Aliens in the S tier. I think that's a given, really. I don't think many people are going to argue with that. We have Alien 3 in A tier. Alien vs Predator and Alien Romulus in the B tier. Resurrection and Covenant in the C tier. And Prometheus and Alien vs Predator 2 in the D tier. So there you go, guys. That is my tier ranking of all of the Alien and Alien vs Predator movies. Let me know in the comments what you think of this ranking. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I would love to know how you would rank them, as a standard ranking or as a tier ranking. I would love to know your thoughts on this. But I'll leave the video there, guys. So thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you all again on the next one. Take care, guys.